Good morning. Today on Spotlight, inside Michigan's multi-million-dollar cannabis business. From medical marijuana to recreational marijuana, what do you need to know to stay on the right side of the law? Corporate attorney Michelle Donovan of Butzel Long will be here to tell us. Jamon Jordan of the Black Scroll Network gets Southeast Michigan ready for Black History Month. And later, remembering Congressman John Dingell Jr. It's Sunday, February the 10th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Up until now, your specialty had been real estate law, probate law, correct?
That is correct.
But you're now the expert at Butzel Long. You co-chair their department on cannabis law.
Yes.
I would imagine that as December 6th of 2018, your life changed drastically.
Yes, it did. With the medical marijuana and the applications and the deadlines and everything just kind of hit all at once, and we needed to put these applications in process. And so I stepped in, and now this is becoming the majority of my practice.
All right, and also with the advent of Michigan becoming the first state in the Midwest to legalize recreational marijuana, that's almost like a two-tiered process here.
Yes, it is, very much so. So the state has a year to actually implement the rules and regulations for recreational marijuana, and the hope is that the rules and regulations follow the track that we have for medicinal, so that we're not reinventing the wheel. The wheel's already been started, and so if we can follow along that track, that will make this process go a little bit more smoother.
You were the attorney that just recently got Oakland County its first medical marijuana facility license.
I, along with my client, the Greenhouse of Walled Lake, we got the first provisioning center. They used to be called dispensaries, but now we call them provisioning centers in Walled Lake, and they were the first type of license in Walled Lake, and they recently just opened last week. Their license was given in October, so it's taken this long for them to open to have the product to start selling.
When this all became legal in terms of recreational marijuana, people said, okay, it's legal, I can go get it. But access has not been easy. Why?
There are no rules. It's passed, so it's legal in Michigan. Michigan is the 10th state to legalize marijuana recreationally, which means that you can have it on you. You can have no more than 2.5 ounces on you. You can have 10 ounces in your home, and you can grow up to 12 plants in your home. What you can't do is you can't purchase it, and you can't sell it. So the only way that you're going to be able to get it legally under recreational without any laws or rules that have been written yet is if somebody gifts it to you. So that's a whole nother area of how people are gifting the marijuana to make it comply under recreational. But there are no places that you can buy it.
All right. What is perhaps the biggest question that you encounter doing your job on both the legal side? What is it you hear most from the average person?
The average person will come in to me and say, how do I get a license? How do I get in? What can I do? I want to have a state license as well. I want to get in this business. So then we go through the process of telling them the application is very rigorous through the state. There's a lot of rules and regulations that an individual has to comply with. You pretty much have to give everything except your health history. So you have to give your financials, your tax returns.
Very transparent.
Very transparent. You know, the state is looking to see if money is being moved and laundered from different entities and individuals, and it's a tracking system as well to find out if that person has enough capital to even sustain this type of business that they want to apply for a license. The license fee alone is $6,000 to the state of Michigan. And then after they get the license, it can be as much as $66,000 annually for that license.
Okay, hang on one second. I need to slip a little break in here. Have a lot more questions for you. We'll be right back with Michelle Donovan. Don't go away. And welcome back to Spotlight. How big of a moneymaker is it? We heard throughout the whole ballot campaign that this was going to be money for the state coffers in Michigan. How big?
It's probably going to be $1 billion industry eventually. with all the income that is being generated from this product.
So the average person is going to say, where's that money going and how is that really helping the state, or does it really help the state and the county and the city?
Well, the tax on the, let's do recreational first. So
Okay.
once recreational is up and running, the sales tax is 6% plus an additional 10% tax. And then the tax is going to be divided 35% towards schools, 35% towards roads, 15% to the county that the license is actually located in, whether it's a grower, provisioning center, testing, transportation, and then 15% to the municipality that actually where that licensed applicant is located. So the taxes are spread pretty evenly in those areas of where that revenue is going to be generated. Now for medical right now, it's 6% plus 3%. So same formula as far as the taxes. So it will generate money for needed communities that might be distressed where you have a licensed applicant that has come into the city, which will give some tax benefits to that location as well.
You were telling me off camera that this has the potential in this state to rival the auto industry, which has up to now been the real bread and butter for this state. True or false?
I think so. I think maybe within 10 years we're going to see this industry grow. It touches everything. So someone who comes into this type of business, lighting, for example, flooring, even the type of ventilation system that you have. So you might have industry individuals and companies that are making these types of products out in the sector now, but are going to retool for marijuana because there's so much specialized equipment that needs to be done.
What do you see as perhaps the biggest challenge or the biggest downside, or things that the state ought to be very, very careful about, and perhaps we've learned something from places like Colorado?
Well, I think one thing that we need to do in Michigan is once recreational, or even prior to recreational, the rules and regulations being put into place and implemented, is that we need to educate the law enforcement as to what this all means, what type of system do we give when we pull people over, how do we test. There's no testing per se in place right now to determine, like a breathalyzer for alcohol that you would blow into. How are we going to determine if when we pull someone over if they have too much in their system? You can't operate anyways, just like with alcohol or any other type of narcotic. You can't be driving a motor vehicle. But what type of training do we give our law enforcement officials so that they understand and can deal with this type of new product that is coming into our commerce that's legal here in Michigan? And Colorado did not do that. So it took them a year to go through that process with their law enforcement so that they can educate as to what exactly is involved with this.
How cautious should employees be of companies that they work for who recognize the federal law that marijuana is not legal, and their employer recognizes that, and not the fact that they may be in Michigan where it's legal? I know our company is one where, if you get tested positive for any kind of drug in your system,
right,
you're out of a job.
Right, and that's pretty much standard as far as a private company. They can still set their rules and their policies as far as their mandatory drug testing, as the employer knows that they could be mandatorily drug tested at any time. And again, depending on how are they going to test for that marijuana in their system. Is it going to be a blood test? Is it going to be a urine test? But as long as the employee is on notice that that's going to happen. And then as far as the federal sector, that's a drug-free zone. So there can absolutely be, no drugs of any kind in anybody's system.
So someone's saying, yeah, but I work in Michigan and it's legal in Michigan, isn't going to do it
right.
any good whatsoever.
It's like saying I'm 21, I can have some whiskey at my lunch. It's the same concept. Now you can, as far as being a patient and having a medical card and being tested by your employer, you have that layer of being a registered patient and that you have taken marijuana for your condition. So that's a little different, as opposed to somebody who doesn't have a patient card who gets tested and fails. That's going to be up to the employer then to say you can be reprimanded or terminated.
I've often heard people just say very casually, anybody can get a medical marijuana card, and it's very, very easy to do that. With it now being legal in terms of recreational, does that make the process even easier?
Well, right now we're still doing medical marijuana cards for patients. So there's 22 conditions that are a checklist of symptoms or chronic illnesses that an individual may have, and a doctor has to, a regular doctor, a licensed physician, has to go through and determine that when they sit down with the patient. So they're not backdoor alley licenses. You actually have to have an appointment with the doctor. There's forms that the state gives the patient that they have to bring to the doctor has to sign off, and the doctor has to interview to make sure that they have one of these conditions. Now the state in February is going to add maybe 2 more conditions, cerebral palsy and chronic aggressive condition. Whether or not those are going to be added to make 23 and 24 to the list, we'll see. But they do regulate the type of illnesses that you have to get the license.
2 more quick questions. Our close proximity to Canada, another country, another border, people going back and forth, what should they be cautious about?
Don't have anything on you. Don't go back and forth, because you're not going to be able to go in with it and you're not going to be able to come out with it. So it's still illegal federally. You can't go through a border and go into another country. You're going to get pulled right away.
All right. The organization called the Great Lakes Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, I think they call themselves, they're a little concerned because they feel the demand to get this product to the market is so great, particularly in Michigan right now, that they're concerned about some of these, I guess it's the caregivers that are growing this and maybe not being as careful as they can, and so some of these products have been recalled and they feel that there's a potential danger there. What does the state do about that?
Well, currently the state has licensed facilities. There's 4 licensed facilities right now that can state test a product. And so the concept is, once your provisioning center is state licensed, you buy from a state licensed grower and your product is tested at a state licensed facility. The difference being that because we don't have enough product right now from the licensed growers to put in the supply chain to a licensed provisioning center, we have to buy product from a caregiver. A caregiver's product is not tested because it doesn't have to be under the current regulation. So the concern is that when you go into a provisioning center, you're buying a product that a caregiver sold to a provisioning center, but the state is treating that by having the patient sign a waiver. So the caregiver network has been in place for many years before the state licensing process even started. And we've never read anything in the paper before, never had any type of accidents or any type of injuries that have happened, illnesses from a caregiver product. So the concern is that the caregiver product is not licensed, not tested in a licensed facility, because it doesn't have to be. So the way that you get around that is having the patient educated when they go in and know you're buying a product that has not been tested. Are you okay with that? If so, you need to sign this waiver.
All right. Michelle Donovan, thank you so much for coming in and
me.
sharing all of this information. We will get you back, because this is obviously something that we're learning in Michigan, and it's growing.
Thank you.
All right, no pun intended, I guess. And we'll be back in just a second. We'll turn our attention to Black History Month, and we'll talk to Jamon Jordan. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Spotlight. Joining me now is Jamon Jordan. He is with the Black Scroll Network. He is also president, and let me get this long title right, of the Detroit Chapter Association for the Study of African American Life and History.
Good job, Chuck.
All right, very good. All right, and you're also a board member on the Historical Society of Michigan.
Yes.
So you wear a lot of different history hats.
Yes, I do.
We're in the thick of Black History Month,
Yes.
annual event. There are a lot of things people can do if they want to expand their horizon and learn more about African American history. That's your specialty. How did you get into all this?
So I was a teacher, a public school teacher, and then I even taught at a charter school for about a decade. So altogether, about 20 years, I was an educator in a traditional classroom as a social studies teacher.
Sure.
And what I found my students lacking, or it wasn't their fault, the lessons, the curriculum lacked it, was an emphasis on Detroit's African American history. So African American history itself is lacking in many of the curriculum and lesson plans and textbooks, but Detroit's African American history is even more so. And my students are Detroit students. They live in the city of Detroit. They're going to school in the city of Detroit, but they don't know this Detroit history.
So they knew about Rosa Parks and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the national figures, but they didn't know what was in their own backyard.
That's right, that's right. I have students who live right near the Ossian Sweet house, Dr. Ossian Sweet, who, of course, was fighting against housing discrimination in 1925. They lived right near there, and they didn't know that that house existed. And so I began taking my students on field trips so they learn and get more in touch with Detroit's role in African American history.
You've got some interesting tours coming up this month. You have one, Doorway to Freedom, Underground Railroad in Detroit and Oakland County.
That's right, that's right. So that I'm doing that presentation out in Rochester Hills. That's a free presentation for the Rochester Hills Historical Society, and it's going to touch on Detroit's role in the African American in the Underground Railroad, but also Oakland County. There's a number of sites in Farmington, in Walled Lake, and in other areas near the city of Detroit that worked with the Detroit activists.
Is that because this was a big abolition community, a lot of abolitionists?
So in Farmington, you had a major portion of the Farmington residents in the 1800s are Quakers. And of course, the Quakers are a major contingent of the abolitionist movement. And of course, they're working with these African American activists who are in Detroit, who are helping people go over to Canada, because Detroit's proximity to Canada makes Detroit a high destination point for people escaping from slavery.
A lot of these locations have been preserved.
Yeah, so we got a number of the homes. Yeah, we got the Philip Sherman House. We got the Nathan Philbrick Tavern. Both of those are in Farmington. We got the Nathan Powers home, and we have a number of the places. The Walled Lake Foster Farmhouse still exists, and of course Second Baptist Church in downtown Detroit. You can't forget that one.
Yeah, and they're right here. Absolutely, that's a very historic site. You have another tour coming up, Frederick Douglass and the Fight for Freedom. And you talk about the number of times Frederick Douglass actually came to the city of Detroit.
That's right, that's right. Detroit, Frederick Douglass came here a number of times. We know for a fact he came at least twice. And he comes to the city of Detroit to give two presentations. One at the old City Hall, the original City Hall that Detroit had, an anti-slavery speech. And then another one at Second Baptist Church, the oldest African-American church in the state of Michigan. And while he's here, he's going to meet with John Brown, this radical abolitionist pastor who is going to lead an uprising by attacking Harper's Ferry military arsenal and handing out the weapons to people who are enslaved.
Another reason you're doing that is because he also was born in the month of February.
That's right. So the agreed upon birth date of him is February 14th. So we don't know his exact date because enslaved people don't always know their exact birth date, but we knew it was around the middle of February, so the agreed upon date is February 14th. So I'm going to be doing that tour at the Charles H. Wright Museum. It's free for people who have a museum membership. So if you want to go on that tour, it does two things. One, you get to learn this history of Frederick Douglass
and
in
it
Detroit,
supports the museum.
And it supports the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History.
Okay, we're going to take a little break. We'll come right back and we'll talk about some more tours that you'll have coming up in the month of February. We'll be right back. Jaman, you have another tour coming up. I believe it's in conjunction with the Detroit Historical Museum.
Yes, that tour is called Learn About Black Bottom, the history of this historic African-American neighborhood. And it's going to be done twice this month, February 17th and February 24th. It'll be done, we'll do the first half of the tour at the Detroit Historical Museum, where people will learn the rich history of Black Bottom, how the historic neighborhood developed and what happened to it, how it was destroyed. And then we're going to go over to the Detroit Public Library, the main branch, right next door.
That's interesting because there are efforts now to bring, Black Bottom back, so to speak. We got the Paradise Valley, which is not quite the exact same area. I mean,
but they're very close and very connected.
Very close, and trying to bring some of those African American businesses back and put them in an area where they are all together, which is what Paradise Valley was all about.
That's right, yes.
And Black Bottom was all about.
Yeah, Paradise Valley, of course, was the business district that was right adjoining or right next to Black Bottom, which was primarily a residential neighborhood. And There is the photo exhibit that Emily Kudo, who is a architect at the University of Detroit Mercy.
Okay.
She's assembled these photographs of old Black Bottom so that we can actually see what Black Bottom looked like. So they'll learn the history.
There were so many businesses. It was such a vibrant area, and the top entertainers from the nation would come there, as well as all the businesses as well. You also have something coming up in Royal Oak.
Yes, yes, on February 21st, which of course is the same date that Malcolm X was assassinated in 1965. I'll be giving a presentation at the Royal Oak Public Library. It's free, and it will be about the Detroit history of Malcolm X. Malcolm X lived in the city of Detroit. He was a minister here before he became the national minister of the Nation of Islam. Of course, his wife was from here, so Betty Shabazz. So there's a lot of Detroit's history involved in Malcolm X. The Nation of Islam itself was founded in the city of Detroit, in Paradise Valley.
Right. As you said, many of these events are free. You do tours all year long.
Yes, I do.
Some of the tours you do have to pay for it because you got to make a living.
That's
and
right.
You got to support
exactly
the tour, so you can get all that information. If people want to get more information, how do they get it?
Yes, they can visit our website, blackscrollnetwork.weebly.com. blackscrollnetwork.weebly.com. That's our website, and you can request a tour for your family reunion, your church, your school, your classroom, your youth group, your family, whatever you want. We can do a personalized, customized tour dealing with African American history for you. You can also visit our eventbrite.com site and see all of the public tours that we offer. Go to eventbrite.com, type in Black Scroll Detroit, and you can see all of our public tours, and you can join one of those tours.
Few newsmakers appeared on Spotlight more than Congressman John Dingell Jr. My last interview with him was in 2013 on the porch of Mackinac Island's Grand Hotel. When you talk to the Obama administration, what is it you tell them that needs to be done in order to make Michigan a viable state and make America a viable country?
Well, Michigan and the whole country needs us to come together. I think one of the most sad things that I see, and I think one of the things that makes most people angry, is our inability as a nation and as people to come together. The nation is divided, and I hear all kinds of bitterness out there from the far right, and I hear an unwillingness to permit public servants like me to come together to work on the nation's problems and to compromise. Our system of government will only work if we're willing to pull together and work together. There's no man in his right mind in this country that can look at his neighbors and say, "Pardon me, fellas, but your end of the boat is sinking. We're all in this thing together."
We'll have more on the amazing life and Dingell's Spotlight appearances next week. Our condolences to his family.